Hello, welcome to another YouTube video. Before we jump into my video, I just wanted to say, you guys, please ignore my background. There's a mess over here. There's a mess over here. I tend to be a perfectionist, and the old me, and I'm trying to get better about it. So the old me would have cleaned the entire background before recording this video, but the new me is not going to do that because that is real life. This is how my background looks 99% of the time. So I'm not going to hide it. Some of you, well, a lot of you have been pinging me in respect to learning how I got a job at Amazon and Google. For context, for those of you who are not familiar with my career journey, I worked at a startup. I interned at a startup which was called UTrip. I think it still exists. So I interned at a startup called UTrip. Then I interned at a FAANG at Amazon. And then after my internship there, I ended up joining Amazon full-time, and I was at Amazon for about 6 years before I started at Google about a year ago. And that being said, I have interviewed at other companies, and I just threw a word at you and I didn't explain it, which was FAANG. So FAANG stands for Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google. And this term is kind of thrown around in the industry to represent the big tech companies, specifically in US. So that's what I will be kind of referencing to FAANG quite a bit today instead of naming individual companies. Now, there are some big companies that are not part of this term, which is Microsoft, and a few other companies, but just assume they are part of it. So companies where I have interviewed. So obviously I've interviewed at Amazon as an intern and as full-time. I interviewed at Google because I work here. I interviewed at Microsoft twice and I got the job offer. I interviewed at Facebook. I failed. I interviewed at Uber. I failed. I interviewed at Airbnb and I passed the interview, but they were already ahead in their pipeline, the interview pipeline, some other candidates, so they did not offer me. Where else? Apple, I never really tried. For some reason, it never attracted me, but who knows down the road. So let's jump right into it. Number one thing that I did was figured out why I wanted to work at a FAANG. And sadly, I went through some bad experiences working with small and interviewing at mid-sized companies. And also a good experience with my internship working at Amazon. I think that was one of the main attraction factors. So let's talk about the bad experiences a little bit. My internship at a startup was not really a bad experience, but I think for me personally, I was interning as a web analytics intern at a startup called UTrip. And I was the only person in that role. So I felt like there was not many learning opportunities, especially from like peer learning, because I was kind of like figuring it out on my own and learning it. And it works for some people who like to learn things on their own and apply. I personally like learning from people who have already done it. So that was one of my reasoning that I figured out later on as to why I was so attracted to working at a big company. The second was that I interviewed at a mid-sized company. One of the things that I figured out early on, that discriminatory behavior. For example, one of the interviewer asked me during my interview when I pretty much answered all my questions and I nailed it, but they were still not sure because the question that they asked me is, how do you expect to work at a demanding job while managing 2 kids at home? First of all, that's none of your business who I have at home and as a mother, if I can deliver or not. So I think that was a big turnoff for me. Another interview that I did that was also at a mid-sized company. So I got the job offer, but I was still not sure if I want to pursue it or not. So I went for a lunch during like my final rounds. And those people just like were joking about personal stuff. And again, like this is my personal experience. I'm not saying like all small companies and mid-sized companies are like that, or not all small Not all companies are like that, but I'm just telling you like some of the things that influenced my decision, like some bad experiences. And now I interviewed at Boeing as well. I got a job offer. Like I was ready to take my Boeing offer because they were all super amazing. I also had an offer from PwC. I also had an offer from KPMG. Those were all great experiences, and I am only talking about a few of them, and those happen to be the bad ones because the topic today is why did I decide to, what helped me to get to figure out like I want to work at a FAANG. So for me, I had like those very solid reasons why I wanted to not possibly work at not really work at a big company, but not work at a small company, especially a company that asked me during interview if I'm going to be able to do my job because I'm a mother. That is just horrible. Like, do not do that. So the thing that I'm trying to say here is that there are thousands of people who apply and who want to work there. So if you really want to stand out, figure out what your reasoning are for working there. The purpose of me mentioning all of this is that find your reasoning. Now, again, my reasoning would be very different from what your reasoning would be. One thing that I loved about working at a big company, specifically when I was interning, is that the access of the number of people that I had that I got to learn from. So I really loved that about my internship experience because I learned a lot from my senior team members who were in the same job family, but I also got to got the exposure to like other job families as well. And that I believed helped me shape my thinking in terms of like what I want to do next. So there was a lot of like learning opportunities, right? People from like the people around me, the sheer people around me. And also the second part that attracted me to FAANG was the number of affinity groups that were present. So as a woman of color, even though like I was the only female on my team that time, I felt like there are a lot of groups I can talk to and I can connect with. So that was also for me to have like a sense of belonging was very, very important because as an immigrant, many times I feel alone, and being able to find a place where you don't feel alone, where you're able to find other people who are like you, even if they're not in your immediate team, was like a big one for me. I almost felt like home. And I know like I'm just being throwing in these like cheesy reasons, but to be honest, those were like some of my big reasons. And the third thing that really, really attracted me was the opportunity to try different roles. I interned as a financial analyst intern, but I transitioned to a data engineer role. And at that time, the company was willing to take a chance on me with the limited knowledge that they had on me. So I just loved that aspect of it, that I can like try different things and try different roles, and if it doesn't work out, like it's not held against me. And that was one of my other reasons to join a big company, because when I was starting out, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. So just to summarize this whole thing, make sure that you have a good reasoning as to why you want to work at a FAANG, because it is competitive. There are thousands of people who apply. So you need to have like a good reason for you to be able to fight that fight. I'm calling it a fight, but it is a lot of work. So just make sure that you understand that. The second thing that really, really helped me is that finding a role that fits me. So if you're trying to apply for big companies, there are hundreds of roles, and it's possible that one role at one company does not match to another role in another company. And this is specifically true for data job families. So make sure that you study the roles that are available at that company and make sure that they are aligned with what you want to do. So for example, if you are, let's say, into operations management, apply to operation management role. Like, don't try to switch job families while you are trying to switch companies as well. So stick to that job family. For me, if I'm in data, I'm going to stick to the data job family. I'm not going to like try to go for a software development job family. So make sure it's a lateral move, and find the role that actually fits you and that you have enough experience to talk about it. So it's a lateral move. Another thing that I did very well is I researched people who were already working there. So I use LinkedIn for this quite a bit, where I would just stalk people. It's not really stalking, it's researching, where I would research people and like study there. For example, if somebody works as a data scientist at Amazon, I would say, okay, I would like go to their profile and see, okay, where did they work before this? Where did they work? What degree did they have? Like, what else did they do to kind of build that portfolio to get to that point? So I studied a lot of those profiles to kind of like understand what has helped, if there is a trend that I can find that is very attractive to these companies that I can also kind of include in my experience as well. So I definitely would recommend that, like, study people who already work there. There is so much rich information available on LinkedIn for free that you have access to, but not everybody does it. So, but you can do it definitely. One of the biggest things is study the company. I talked about like finding your reasonings and why you are a good fit. Now let's talk about like why you are valuable to the company specifically. So the way to do that is study the company's mission, whichever FAANG we're talking about. What is their mission? What are their principles? And what kind of culture and environment that they provide. So, for example, we're talking about Amazon. Amazon has like a very unique, distinct leadership principles that you kind of need to know and understand before you actually get to the interviewing part, because you need to show aspects of it in your resume. I'm also sharing a few book recommendations here, which are specifically put together to cover some of the topics for FAANG. So yeah, I talked about like how different companies have different objectives, different missions, different leadership principles. Make sure you study that and also have like a good value proposition for how you can provide value to the company. So these are like some high level things that you should do to kind of like understand where you fit in, where the company fits into your vision, and where you fit into the company's vision. And then once you have like figured that part out, then like start networking. Like, make sure that you have built your network, so when you're applying for jobs, you can actually reach out to somebody who already works at that company and get a referral. So that is also one of the things that I did when I was applying for when I was trying to leave Amazon and trying to interview at different companies. When I got my job at Amazon, it was, I'll be honest, I didn't have to work that much because Amazon recruited from my university. Like, to date, I never applied to Amazon because I thought that I don't deserve. This is like too high of a company for me to kind of like work there. But boy, I was wrong. So I actually attended one of the networking events, and during that networking event, the person that I talked to just took my resume casually, and the next thing I know is that I got an interview call, and I interviewed, and I even got the job offer too, which was still to date, it just, you know, like looking back, I feel like that was like meant to be, because to date, I never applied. I never applied officially to an Amazon job. It just happened. So I don't want to say I had it easy. I did had resources around me, and definitely the networking, I leveraged the networking opportunities that my school offered. So that was, and not a lot of students did that, and I did it. So similar to that, in the real world, there are not a lot of people who are going to utilize the networking opportunities. So you should take it upon yourself to kind of like build your network, not when you need a job, do it now. So when it's time, let's say 6 months down the road, you already have somebody who you can ask for referral and interview help if possible, like tips on the leadership principles or whatever that company has to offer. Get to like the actual meaty part now. So let's say you got the interview call and now it's time for the interview. So a lot of people make it to the interview, but they don't make it to the final job stage. And one of the reasons for that, interviewing at FAANG is hard. The interview itself is hard. Like, it's no kidding. The interview is no joke. when I was interviewing at Amazon, like for my internship, like that was just the internship, I had to sit in a room for like 4 to 5 hours consecutively, where one person was going and one was coming, and just the process of it is so tiring. So you should be mentally prepared for that. But forget that, like even if you are comfortable with that part, I do want to call out that you need to make sure that you nail your interview, regardless of how tiring it may be. You need to know your shit. Excuse my language, but you pretty much need to know your stuff, what you're talking about. And one of the things that I did is I practiced a lot. I studied a lot for the interview. Interviewing is just like another big project, if not a degree program in itself. Like, so you need to like spend a lot of time preparing for the interviews itself. So for example, when we're talking about the technical interview, make sure that you know your stuff. If somebody asks you a question, you are able to answer it. There is no getting away from it. So getting a job, like you did all the hard work, getting the interview call, but don't just screw it up at this point. You should be 100% prepared. Like whether that is doing lead code, whether that is doing something else, so technical interview is one part. I also have like the behavioral questions. I have like pages written of interview questions that I anticipate to get. And I have under each question, for example, if there's a question called, tell me about a time that you failed, I would have at least 3 project examples listed under in my preparation document. So, and then I would like rehearse it and practice it, and I'll make sure to follow the STAR method. So do all this work, do a lot of learning on your own, make sure you're preparing for the interview using the resources, whether that is Glassdoor or LinkedIn or whatever your network, prepare for the interview, and do the mock interviews. I realize like when I'm answering my own questions, it's sometimes easier, but when it's somebody else who is asking me, I tend to get nervous. So make sure that you're doing a lot of mock interviews and kind of trying to mimic that real world setting. So I think that was pretty much it. Just networking, having the right connections, getting referrals, knowing why you want to work at a FAANG, knowing what value you can provide to the FAANG, pretty much nailing your interview, the tech and non-tech part, and leaving no room for mistakes there, because you need to nail it. And the last thing I want to say that all of this is a lot of work, and do not be discouraged if you don't get the job. The chances are there are like 10 other people who interviewed along the same time that you interviewed for the same role. And sometimes it just happened to be there's one person who is just with more experience, and the company end up offering that role to them. So just know that there are thousands of people applying. So if you get rejected, do not take it personally. Try again a different way. Learn what you did wrong in your last interview. Learn from people who actually made it and people who recently interviewed and what helped them. I think that pretty much covers the things that kind of helped me land jobs at FAANG, specifically Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. I know I look worn out after talking about all this, but it's 4 p.m. my time and I've been working since morning. So I hope this was useful. I did all of this. I also had people like mentors by my side throughout my interviews where I would get nervous, like let's say one day before the interview and I'm getting really nervous and I would just be like freaking out that I'm not gonna get it. I will basically text message that person and they will kind of like encourage me and kind of like tell me like, no, you got this, like you did all the hard work preparing for the interview, so just stay confident and do not. So those kind of things also definitely help. I think one of the things that has really worked in my favor is that I have built that circle of people around me who I can ask for help, but also when so like also not just like getting the referral part, but also like asking, like helping me mock interview. my mock interview, like when I was preparing for Google, the person who did my mock interview was my teammate at Amazon at that time, and we were like casually talking about like interviewing for different companies, and we kind of like made a pact that she will interview me, mock interview me, and I'll mock interview her, and we'll kind of like prepare for the interviews together. And we did that. So definitely like find the people around you who will be supportive of your pursuit of like getting jobs, especially at a FAANG company. But just know that it's not end of the world if you don't get it. Like it's great working at big companies. It's great working at small companies. Just do wherever you are, just do amazing work, and don't overthink it. Make it your goal. But like if it doesn't work out, try a different method. Don't change your goal, change your method. That's like one of the things that I learned recently, and I think it just like summarizes this whole process. So I hope this video was useful. I know I talked a lot. This is like not unlike my other videos where I have a lot of pictures to show you guys. I don't have anything to show you. The only thing I have to show is like all this mess that is in the background. But I really hope this video was useful, and some of the learnings that I shared here are useful to you. If you have more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I would be happy to answer those. One thing that I do want to call out is that I have no experience with like getting work visas, so I won't be able to answer any work visa related questions, but I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have about the things that I shared today. All the best with your job search, and if working at a FAANG is your goal, be it. Like, you got this. Work hard, follow some of the things that I have suggested, and you will be working at a FAANG soon enough. All right, I'll talk to all of you later. Have a great one. Bye. Okay, so I just realized that the video that I just uploaded before, my face was like in here when it should be like somewhere here, so I'm not like in your face. But I already recorded it, so I don't know what to do with it. It's going.